listening to Seminary Dropout, and I'm your host, Shane Blackshear. Somewhere in between seminary and youth camp, it's Seminary Dropout. Let's go. Thanks for joining me, friends. My guest today is Austin Channing Brown. Austin collaborates with various Christian ministries who are moving forward a vision of racial reconciliation and socioeconomic understanding. She also works as a resident director and multicultural liaison for Calvin College. Whether speaking, training, facilitating dialogue, or planning events, Austin loves the messy work of reconciliation. Austin Channing, thanks so much for joining me today.
My pleasure to be here. Thanks for asking.
Absolutely. You tell a story on your blog about how you went on a 3-day bus trip when you were in college, exploring some of the civil rights sites in the South, and that really seemed to be kind of a transformative moment for you. And I'm curious about a few things. One being, what was your idea of racial reconciliation and race relations before that, and even as you were growing up? And then what that moment meant to you and how that changed your outlook?
Oh boy, big question. So the concept of racial justice was maybe familiar to me at that point. So I'd thought about race in context of very specific justice issues. So I knew that when I volunteered at a homeless shelter, for example, most of the clients where this shelter was located were African American. Why was that? I worked with foster care teens. Most of them were African American. So I knew that I think I had been called the N-word at like 3rd grade. So I knew that there was a thing called race that was icky and sticky and really connected to justice issues. But I didn't really know where I fit into that paradigm. And so when going on this trip really gave me the language for being able to talk, not just about race, but about this concept of bringing races together, which was huge.
You grew up in Ohio, is that right?
I did.
What was the makeup of your town? Was it a large town or a small town? Was it diverse? Was it segregated?
So my world, so I don't want to speak for all of Toledo, Ohio, because I didn't know what the demographics were when I was growing up. I had no idea. But my world was very white. So my family was all African American and very proud of being African American. So I had soul food and all kinds of Black art around the house and Black literature in the house. My parents were very intentional about teaching me about Black history. So I was very much aware that I was Black and had some idea of what that meant. But everything else in my world was very white. So I attended a white school. I was 10 years old before we started attending church. And so everything associated with Christianity also had to do with whiteness. And it wasn't until I went to high school that, you know what, I can't lie. High school was also a really good experience. I went to a predominantly white Catholic high school. But we didn't really struggle with race interpersonally. We knew that there were some systemic issues that maybe seemed to be happening around race. So for example, why didn't our Black gospel choir get the same benefits as the white chorus, right? So we knew that there were some things that were happening systemically that seemed a little off center. But in terms of interpersonal relationships, loved my high school. It was fantastic. So it really wasn't until I got to college that I was really exploring race and race relations really for the first time. Intentionally for the first time.
I'm curious what happened when you were 10. Did your parents become Christians at that point? Why did you start going to church?
Yeah, great question. Yeah, that's a good question. My parents actually got divorced. Okay. And my stepmom was a Christian, and she demanded that we go to church every Sunday, which was wonderful. It changed much of our lives. I didn't know that we weren't like practicing Christians. Because I was at a Christian school. So I assumed that we were then Christians. And it wasn't until she entered our lives that our lifestyle started to look much more Christian than it had before.
What did you feel when you went to these sites in the South when you were on this trip? First of all, where did you go specifically?
Oh man, I went on this trip 3 times, so I don't remember all the sites, but of that first trip. But the first site we went to was a plantation in
Mm.
Louisiana that was still running. And it was awful because the tour guides treated history, they sugar-coated history
Mm.
a lot. And so we went to the shacks where the slaves were, and we were told about how great their shack was and how much better the troughs were that the slaves ate out of compared to what would have been happening at other plantations. And at first we were all thinking, is this a joke? Right? Like is there a punchline coming or just kidding? And when there wasn't, we were all very angry about that.
Did the
Very, very angry.
were the tour guides like descendants of the
Oh,
people? Like what interest did they have in saying how much better it was than the others?
they were descendants. And so they
That is
remembered,
bizarre.
right? So they heard all these stories about how happy the slaves were and how they sang while they were working. And yeah, and so they were passing it along as tour guides of their plantation farmland. It was awful. It
Wow.
was awful.
Okay. So yeah, I can imagine how that would be
So that was the
pretty
first site.
transformative.
Yes, and then we left from that site and went to Jackson, Mississippi, where we saw a lynching museum.
Oh
So we
wow.
walk into this space, and it is filled with pictures and postcards and newspaper clippings of how happy white people were to lynch African
Hmm.
Americans. And every picture or postcard had a story under it that explained what was happening and how many people attended and all the smiling faces. And yeah, it was an intense trip. And that was the first two sites. I'm sure there are at least three or four others. So it's a very intense trip.
Did you did you start to feel a calling to some sort of vocation in race relations, racial reconciliation, and that sort of thing during that trip?
I did. I did. So emotions ran really high after those two things in particular. Um, and there was a lot of distancing that was happening because part of the trip is that you get paired up with someone who's a different race. And so all African American students were being expected to talk and converse with the white students about what we were experiencing together. And that wasn't really happening, as you can imagine. And so there was a lot of like pulling apart and
Wow.
yeah, so it was rough. And then after a few minutes, um, one young lady who was one of my best friends today stood up and she said I don't want to distance myself from the pain that the African American students are experiencing right on this bus. And she's like, and I can't fix it. And so I'm kind of left with like, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do right now. And she said, but I know that doing nothing is no longer an option for
Mm,
me.
mm.
And as she said those words, they rang true for me too, where I was looking around the bus thinking the animosity, the anger, the disconnection that exists right now, I feel called to do something about this. Like doing nothing is just no longer an option for me. Like this is going to be a part of my life. And so, yeah, it changed everything.
So now you did a lot of things between then and in your position now, and one of those
Sure.
you got your master's in racial reconciliation. Is that what the official title was?
In social
Social
justice. It was
justice.
in
Okay,
social
that's
justice.
right. That's right.
Yeah.
And so now your job is working as a resident director, and multicultural liaison for Calvin College. What do
You
you
got it.
what does that entail? The multicultural liaison part.
It kind of means I get to opt in and out of whatever is happening at the college, truthfully. Because my full-time job is as a resident director where I manage a dorm of approximately 240 students. It's kind of a like really full-time job. And so being the liaison gives me an opportunity to sort of assess what else is happening on campus in the multicultural world and figure out what I can and can't do. And honestly, we figure it out day by day what that looks like. So I spend a lot of time just talking with the people who run the multicultural office, daydreaming, strategizing. Um, working on developing relationships with students of color, which is not immediate, and being very new to Calvin, still working on that. But yeah, it changes all the time.
What's the racial makeup of the students there at Calvin College?
Oh gosh, I just heard this number and I'm scared to say it because it might be wrong. Um, I want to say it's 13% students of color,
Okay.
but I could be wrong about that.
Okay. That's a fair disclaimer. I was putting you on the spot. I didn't give you these questions ahead
Yeah.
of time.
Yeah, I do have paperwork somewhere that has the breakdown, but I don't remember what it is.
Gotcha. So you've written a lot. Like, I mean, your entire blog is basically focused on faith and race and gender and those
Yeah.
things. And so you've written about this extensively and obviously studied this in school and all that kind of stuff. Um, and you've written a lot of really important pieces in the last year, and then especially on Ferguson and the things that have transpired in Ferguson, some really important stuff. I heard you say in an interview recently that there's this disconnect, and that to especially a lot of white people, racist means to be mean, to be a mean person. And then you said there are really nice racists in the world. And you said whether or not you're a good person really has nothing to do with whether or not you're also racist. There's a lot to unpack there. Um, what do you mean? I don't even know what to ask you about that. Just talk about that some.
Yeah, so the line actually came from Mad Men, so I just want to give credit where credit is due.
I love Mad Men.
Yeah, and it's a conversation happening between two white characters, actually. And one of the white characters is yeah, I'm sure there are really great racists in the world. Like they're super kind. But I think, like you said, there's a lot to unpack about that. So we often, because our civil rights history is televised, we have a picture of what it means to be racist. And the picture often looks like a white guy with a bullhorn screaming the N word at teenagers who are trying to walk into a high school.
Sure.
Right? Like that's our picture. Our picture is white people spitting on marchers as they try to walk down the street.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Mm-hmm.
fire hoses and dogs and right like it's a very clear but very overt picture of
Mm-hmm.
what racists look like, right?
Yeah.
And I would say one, yes. like that's true.
Sure.
It's just not to the extent of the truth, right? And
Right.
so at the core of racism is a belief that whiteness is superior to anything else, right? Whiteness is the thing to be.
Mm-hmm.
And there are a lot of white people who think that, right? That if you are a person of color, then you are somehow innately inferior. So you are not as intelligent. You are prone to violence. You are not deserving of the same education that others are. You are poorer. You want to be on welfare, right? That there's all these ideas that because I'm a person of color, then I am somehow inferior. And that if I were white or whiteness is better. So white schools are better and white education is better and the way white people talk is better. And right. So
Yeah.
that just there's this general sense that the way white people do things is great. And there are a lot of really nice white people who think that the way they do, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
That the way they live their lives is a better way. And that is inherently racist.
Yeah. So it sounds like part of what you're saying is we've set it up in such a way to view anything less than the guy on the bullhorn and the hoses and, the KKK, anything less than that is not racist. That's
Right.
like that's the system that we've set up to believe.
Exactly. And so those who are proponents of racial justice spend a lot of time unpacking why segregation is racist, right? And why our educational system is racist, because there's a whole system that is benefiting whiteness at the expense of people of color. Um, and there are really nice people who have decided to move out to the suburbs and take their tax dollars with them and, right, create these wonderful, great schools. And then, which is fine, but then to also look down at the poor school in the neighborhood that they
Sure.
just left and say, oh my gosh, I can't believe that you have this terrible, horrible school. Well, that's a result of racism. That's a result of you wanting to get away to create the better thing for you at the expense of this other community, this other group of people.
Well, you really lead into a great segue because I think that that is a perfect example of a task that really only the church is suited to do, because it seems like outside of Christ, I have no other motivation than to protect my own, if that makes sense. So like my daughter is not old enough to go to school right now, but when she is, we will, if we stay in an inner city school, that will be because of who we are in Christ, and that we have chosen to live our lives in such a way that is self-sacrificial in a way. But outside of that, just on a societal, secular level, I wouldn't have that, and I would say whatever I need to do to get my kid into the best school is what I'm going to do. Does that make sense? I mean, so I guess what I'm trying to say is, in a sense, it seems like part of this is something that we cannot legislate, that only the church is suited to do because it's a heart issue. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I just wish it was more true than maybe it is. Right? So
Okay.
I right? Like I in my heart, I think that Christians absolutely have a unique opportunity to live this out based on what we believe about God and humanity. Um, but unfortunately, there is this disconnect that happens even among Christians, um, particularly when God becomes Santa Claus for us. And so God is concerned about me, and God wants what's best for me. And God gave me this house, and God gave me the money to go get the house, and God gave me the opportunity to go to the suburbs, and God, right, that
Yeah.
that privilege is being masked as blessings.
Wow.
And so we don't look at our lives as one of privilege. We're like, oh, but God gave it to me.
Yeah.
And that means I get to go do dot, dot, dot. When Christians certainly could have the introspection that says, how am I using my privilege to benefit community? How do I live into community? How do I see other people? Do I see them as the imago Dei? Do I see them as just important as right the image that I reflect, but just as important, right? Like that, not less important, but just as important and necessary to my life. If I'm going to have a full life, then I need to see the imago Dei in other people, because I, by myself, am not an accurate reflection of God. So I think there's a number of ways that Christians could live into this, but
Right.
unfortunately, our confusion with privilege and blessings often gets in the way.
Yeah, yeah. And I didn't mean to make it sound like that was reality. I mean, there's
Yeah,
such an opportunity there if the
such
church
an
would be
opportunity.
the church. And,
Yep.
and the other thing that I've never thought about before, but that thing that we do where we, disguise our blessing as, or privilege as blessing, and that sort of thing,
Hmm.
that's really a that's prosperity gospel. Like that's, we don't think of it that way because we think of prosperity gospel as, God will bless me with a nice house and a big car or whatever. But it's also, God will bless me with the ability to move to the suburbs and get to the A+ school and that sort of thing. I've never really thought of that till this moment, but that's exactly what that is. There's also this very
Yeah. And
good,
I don't think it's inherently bad. I think all parents want better for their kids, right?
yeah,
So I don't think those are inherently bad desires. I just think that when we let them go unchecked, right, when we don't think about the results of those decisions, then we end up in some pretty messy places, particularly around race.
definitely. And The other thing I feel like I see Christians doing a lot, white Christians doing a lot, is wrapping it up in protection. Like, my kids are, I'm a steward of my kids, and God wants me to take care of them and to give the best for them. And so we can wrap it up in whatever we really want. We can wrap it up in that nice packaging of, I'm taking care of God's kids for him, that sort of thing. And my family in general, and there's also a lot of like misogyny and other stuff wrapped up in that as well.
Yes.
But that's a whole other podcast.
Right. Yeah, we as Christians, we're very creative for figuring out how God is blessing what we want.
Right.
And we're a little hesitant to consider what God might be asking of us as we think about, I understand, who doesn't want to send our kids to a great school? We all want to send our kids to a great school, right? But can we change laws so that school funding is no longer tied to the, housing? And, like, are there ways that you are free to do that, but you can still live out this idea of community and making things better for everybody at the same time? I don't have good answers for that. I don't have children, but I wish, right? But I wish that was part of the conversation. How do we start living as all communities matter, because all communities are a reflection of God?
You've said that justice comes first and then reconciliation.
Mm-hmm.
What does that mean? And for those who don't understand, what the difference might be between the two?
Yeah. So we often want reconciliation to be a happy-go-lucky, aren't we all glad we're together in the same room kind of moment. And in order to truly be reconciled, to find a sense of deep peace, a sense of genuine harmony, a sense of equality, a sense of all being made equally in the eyes of God, requires a lot more than just sitting around and holding hands.
Yeah.
It requires that we change some systems and structures that we have been very resistant to change. And so the easiest ways to point that out, particularly for churches, is just literally looking at your church makeup, right? So there are quite a few, perhaps, I don't know numbers, multi-ethnic churches where the congregation is very diverse, but the board isn't diverse, the leadership isn't diverse, the pastors aren't diverse. So you have this situation where we're like, yay, we're all together. And yet none of the decision makers, none of the visionaries are in the room to help craft who this church is. And so you've got an injustice happening where still we're living under this, what can only be described as white superiority, because otherwise, why wouldn't you need people of color, right? So whether you want to call it that or not, it's what you're living out, this idea that whiteness is best and whiteness knows best and whiteness makes the best decisions and whiteness knows where this church should be going. But that's not being reconciled. We're not reconciled if you still hold power over me. We're reconciled when we're equal and when both of our voices matter. And that's a tough thing for people to let go of.
And it seems like a lot of those churches, I know, if you, whether it's take a church that's not multiracial, and take a white church. I'm sure if you asked anybody in that white church, would you like to be multiracial? Would you like it if there were more people of color in your presence at church? They would probably say, yes, we would love that. But then if you ask about giving up power, is it in what you're talking about, the leadership team, however their system is, elders, deacons, pastors.
Right.
Whatever, then there seems to be the breakdown and the disconnect. And it seems like if we if people who look like me really want reconciliation, there's got to be an element of giving up power in there in some way.
Yeah. And I would, yeah. So at least, at the very least, sharing it, right? I think a lot of people would just like to share it. Like,
Sure.
we just share it.
But I mean, on on some kind of, if there's a team or something of,
Yep.
whatever. If there's a team of 5 people, you're gonna
Yeah.
have to give up some of that power of 2 or 3 of them to share the power, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So, he might kill me for doing this, but John Klein Peter, who's the pastor of Willow Creek Community
Oh
Church
yeah.
downtown
Mm-hmm.
Chicago campus, one thing that he has done, I think in the last year, maybe a little more than a year, is given up his power over the structure of the worship part of the worship service. And so he has brought together a diverse team that gets together at least once a month to discuss what the service is going to look like. What songs are we going to sing? What elements are going to be a part of the service? Are we doing spoken word or rap or dance? Like, what does it look like? I was very impressed by that because he didn't include a clause that says he can overrule whatever gets whatever gets decided. So here is a white pastor of a multi-ethnic church who is saying the voice of the diversity needs to speak louder than my voice as pastor. That is huge. And it's huge, I think, because he didn't just say, okay, black guy, you do what you want and I'll just sit back, right? He expected a team to share their power and to figure it out together. So, right. So now all voices are equal. All voices are together. They're working on a common project to figure out what's best for the community. And no single person can overrule everybody else.
Yeah.
That's what I'm talking about.
That's, I mean, it seems very kingdom, like, it seems like
and it makes for incredible worship services. In my personal opinion.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
One of the pieces that you wrote for Relevant Magazine, you said that for reconciliation to take place, white people would need to risk some things. And one of the things you said was that they would need to risk the death of your dream home and safe neighborhoods. That resonates with me a lot. My wife and I moved, I guess, a little over a year now. We bought our first house in a historically black neighborhood, and it's mixed now, but still definitely mostly a minority neighborhood. And I wrestle and struggle with I'm being very glad I'm here, but not wanting to simply gentrify this neighborhood. And so how do I do that? What is that fine line? Because I think there's a lot of people out there like me, that fine line between, or maybe it's not a fine line, the line between gentrification and risking, like you said, risking the death of your dream home in a safe neighborhood, providing all of that for my family.
Yeah, it's really hard to name all the ways that that people could live a more just life, right? And so I have a tendency to go to things that, I don't know, are hard, but that I know people are doing, right? So
Sure.
Not things that are crazy, but things that are hard. And so I do want to lead by saying I don't think every white person should be moving to the hood. I think that there are specific white people who can move to the hood, right?
Yeah.
And there are some white people who I've said very clearly to, you should not. Like, you will do more damage than good because you're not ready.
Right. Yeah.
You're not ready.
Sure.
Like this is more about you than it is about the community, right? This is about you getting brownie points. This is about you feeling like the savior. This is about you thinking you have all the answers. Like, this is about you doing stuff that may not be healthy. So I do just want to put that caveat out there. Sure. But that to say, I wish one of my really good friends could speak to this, because I am not a white person who has moved into the hood, right? And so, right, and so I want to acknowledge that. But I would say that as I look at this one person in my head, um, she moved to a neighborhood that is not in the process of gentrifying. This is
Sure,
not an
sure.
up and coming neighborhood. This is
Right.
not nice condos beginning to creep in that she went and found and got a really good deal for. She moved into a neighborhood that is avoided at all costs, generally. She moved and bought a house for the same price that any other person would have paid for that house. She lives, goes to church, and works all in that neighborhood.
Mm,
Um, and she follows, how do I say this? She follows the will of the community.
mm.
So she doesn't come in and look around and go, you know what? I think we need some neighborhood watch groups. Let me go start one. Right? She looks at what the community is saying it needs and then she joins in. So she is not, she would never call herself a leader. She would not say that she's an activist. She is a person who has found a community that she loves, and that's where she lives. And I think it's a really beautiful way to live, because it is countercultural, and yet she is not in any danger of gentrifying this neighborhood, um, or of doing things that are really unhealthy
Mm.
for the neighborhood. She is living there. That is her life. That is where she's raising her kid and where she's sending her child to school. And um, it's been really beautiful to watch her life unfold. And it wasn't like a momentary decision, right? She didn't do it for 2 years. Like this is her life. This is where she lives, and I really love that.
Hmm. I'm curious about how it feels I don't have a better way to ask this, to be asked this type of questions by white people like me. Because what I mean is, I think there are a lot of us who grew up seeing the generation before us, or even our own generation, not have a very humble posture and telling telling black people what racism is and what it isn't and that kind of thing. And so we want to take a more humble posture, but sometimes that comes across or is us turning you into our teachers in a weird way. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, I so that's a very layered conversation, right? And depending on which black person you ask and what their mood is, you could get 127 different answers different answers to that question. And so I want to say that. Um,
Well, and
but
that's part of what I'm asking
yeah,
is being
yeah.
a if we're not careful, we can treat you as a sound piece for an entire culture.
Mhm.
That's not really
Yeah.
fair.
Yeah, it gets dangerous.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, it's dangerous work. It's really dangerous work, particularly for people of color, but even for white people. I mean, if this is what you feel you've been called to, there's some dangers attached to you too. Um, yeah, it's really dangerous work. And I think that we being people who are working towards justice are getting better at figuring out how to minimize those dangers. For example, we're recognizing the need for community, um, both community where we are, community via social media. We're figuring out how to use social media to build our own community, so that we can talk with each other, so that we can check in with one another. I saw that happening a lot while Ferguson was unfolding, where even via Twitter, we'd be like, hey, everybody okay?
Yeah. Yeah.
Hey, have you taken a break? Have you turned the TV off for a second?
Yeah.
Like, take a break. I will catch you up. Go to sleep. Right. So I know that when I was at Willow, was a part of a team who never did race trainings alone
Hmm.
or even taught a class on race alone. So there was always a community of people who were leading it together. So if one of us did get tired or got triggered, then the others could step up and sort of take over and keep it going.
Hmm.
So I think that there are things that we're learning. I think we're learning to say no when we don't feel like being the teacher, so that when we are the teacher, we can give ourselves fully to it. And lastly, I would say I think we're getting better with who our audience is and who our audience isn't. My audience, particularly around my blog, maybe not in any other context, but specifically with my blog, is for people who have already been convinced that racial reconciliation should be a part of their lives, right? If you read my blog, you're probably not going to find one verse where in my blog where I'm like, this is the verse that you should believe in order to do this work, or here is my justification for why I am saying all these things.
Yeah.
I'm just not that like 101, here, let me prove this, that this should be a part of something you do.
Yeah.
My blog is set up for people who are already living into this and are like, now what? I've been convinced, but now what do I do? And so, but that's part of knowing my audience, right? So if I get super duper 101 questions, I might say, you know what, you should go read Divided by Faith, right? Like go do some stuff. And when you've done some stuff, come back and we'll have a conversation about that. So yeah, I think in some ways we also have to get better about what we expect people to bring to the table. Yeah. But yeah, there's a lot of things. There's lists and lists of things that I feel like we're doing to get better at how we are teachers, when we are teachers, who we are teaching. But it's practice. You only learn by practice.
It seems
which is what makes it dangerous.
Right. It seems like it can be really emotionally exhausting work.
It is. And in the same token, it is exhilarating work.
Yeah.
It's exhilarating to see people come together, to see the aha moments happen, to see worship experiences unfolding between people. It's amazing work, but it comes at a cost.
Why do you think, and this is just like all about me tonight, because my family has been looking for a new church. The church we were part of kind of dissolved earlier this year. And one of the things that's become very important that maybe was not as high on the list in previous church searches is diversity. And I've been really disheartened to see the lack of multicultural churches. Why do you think that's so hard for us? Why is it so rare for us to do that?
Well, one, because it's new. And again, we don't like to think that it's new, but it's kind of new. Yeah. We were still integrating schools in the 70s. So, we haven't been doing this as long as we like to think that we've been doing this. That word power is one reason. The fact that we have had ethnic specific churches for generations and generations is another reason. So if your grandmother started the church, great grandmother started the church, and now we're gonna risk handing it over to white people, that sounds good and scary.
Sure.
And the other way around, sharing power is a scary thing. Which I think is why there are so many more church plants who are multi-ethnic, because they get to start that way, as opposed to historically monocultural churches who are now becoming multi-ethnic. It's much more difficult to do.
Well, I've had a really good time talking with you. Thank you so much for joining me and for all your writing and everything. And it's so meaningful. Okay, I said that was the last question. I was lying. This is the last question. Are you working on anything right now other than your blog?
Ooh, good question. I am, actually. So I've talked to a couple publishers about proposals that I'm working on. So we were talking super early in the game here. But yeah, I've got a couple book ideas that I'm trying to work out on paper and not in my head anymore. So all the prayers would be appreciated. But yes, absolutely. I would love to write much longer, much more in depth than my blog allows. And so we'll see.
All right. Looking forward to it. You heard it here first, listeners. Okay. Well, thanks again so much for joining me. I really had a great time, Austin.
Good. I'm so glad. Thanks for inviting me and for being so flexible with my schedule. Holy smokes. I'm so sorry.
No problem. Not a problem.
These college students keep me running, but I'm glad we did this. This was good.
Hey friends, a while back I was asked to review Logos 6. Now, some of you may be aware of Logos Bible software. Logos has recently come out with Logos 6, version 6, and the folks at Logos, they gave me a copy and asked me to do a review of it, and so here it is. I hope you enjoy. So the word that comes to mind when I played around with Logos 6 is exhaustive, meaning it covers everything. You can use the software for the rest of your life with no updates, and you would still never get through all of the content. It is essentially a biblical studies doctorate in a box, except it doesn't come in a box, it's on your computer. If you're a pastor or someone who gives sermons fairly regularly, then this is a no-brainer for you. You absolutely need to get this program. If you're a seminary student or even somebody who just wants to study the Bible more in depth, then I can't think of a better tool to invest in. Just run through a few features of Logos 6. It's got interactive maps. There's this amazing tool they've come up with where you can see a picture. It'll show you a picture of a present-day site of a biblical landmark, and then you can swipe over that picture to reveal an artist's rendering of what the landmark looked like in biblical times. There are tons and tons of language tools in Logos 6. Even if you've studied ancient Greek or Hebrew, you probably don't speak it fluently, and you probably can't just look at any random word in the text and translate it with all the subtleties and nuances, but Logos 6 can. Logos 6 also contains other texts besides the Bible, such as extra biblical texts, commentaries, and words from important historical figures within Christianity. There are even graphics for sermon notes, and they look really, really good. Logos 6 has different versions, and there's a standard version, which is probably what I will go with, and then versions specific to different faith traditions like Anglican, Baptist, Lutheran, Pentecostal, and Charismatic, Reformed, and Seventh-day Adventist. Beyond that, within those categories, there are packages of all different prices to meet anyone's need or budget. If I could complain about anything about Logos 6, that some might be intimidated by the price of some of the advanced versions, but honestly, when you calculate the virtual library of information that you're getting, and it is, and you can go to the website and take a look at it, I'll give you the address later, and you'll see just how much content you're getting. The cost is well worth it, even for those top packages. And even if that's too much for you, if you just can't afford it, or if it's an overload of information, there's a starter version and it's affordable. And then you could upgrade it any time from there if you want to do that. So I think it's just a fantastic tool. And like I said, if you're a pastor, if you're someone who does sermons regularly, it truly is a no-brainer. I mean, it's everything. It's your brain. It's just everything you could ever want for a sermon all in one. So I highly recommend it if you're one of those people who would use this stuff, these kind of resources. I have an affiliate relationship with Logos. So you can go to their site and you put in my code and you'll get 15% off. And also, a portion of whatever you purchase will be given back to support Seminary Dropout. So you get a fantastic product and support Seminary Dropout. What could be better? So if you purchase, use the code Blackshear, that's my last name, BLACKSHEAR 6. Blackshear 6, all one word. Use that at checkout, and you'll get 15% off, and a portion will go to Seminary Dropout. So logos.com, LOGOS.com, and there will be a link to this on the show notes. So if you go to ShaneBlackshear.com, you can click on the link, go straight there. Okay, that's all for Logos. Thanks for listening, and I think that this would be a really good and creative way for you to support the show. And like I said, get a product that is really, really worthwhile. Thanks for joining me for another episode of Seminary Dropout. Remember, you can find all the show notes for this show and all shows at ShaneBlackshear.com. Thanks to those that left ratings and reviews on iTunes this week. Remember, that keeps the show front and center. Also, remember, you can find me on Twitter at @BeardOnABike. That's @BeardOnABike. Also, I'm on Facebook, facebook.com/ShaneBlackshear123. And remember that Seminary Dropout is listener supported. You can visit supportseminarydropout.com and press Become a Patron. Remember, this music you're listening to right now is by D.L. Rossi. You can find him online on iTunes and at dlrossi.com. All right, thanks again for joining me for another episode of Seminary Dropout. Stay tuned for next week's episode. Love you. Take care.
Strange thing. What love will do to your brain. You think you're dying.